Your bathroom looks completely normal. That's the problem. What you're standing in is a compressed version of 3 separate rooms that got flattened into one to save builders money, and that decision has been shaping your mornings, your cleaning routine, and your repair bills ever since. Japan kept the 3 rooms. Most of the West didn't. That gap shows up every day in ways you probably never noticed because you've never lived somewhere built the other way. If you've ever wondered why your bathroom always feels like it's working against you, you're about to find out. The combined bathroom, toilet, sink, and tub all sharing the same 4 walls, didn't start as a design philosophy. It started as a construction shortcut. In the early 20th century, as indoor plumbing moved from luxury to standard, builders discovered they could run a single plumbing stack through one room and connect all 3 fixtures to it. One stack, one room, lower cost, faster build. The math was simple, and the result became the dominant residential standard across the United States, the United Kingdom, and most of the Western world within a few decades. The promise was convenience. Everything in one room to tile, one room to ventilate, one room to clean. It sounded efficient, and on paper, it was. A single plumbing chase running vertically through the house meant a builder could roughen an entire bathroom in less time, with less pipe, and with less coordination between trades. One permit, one inspection, one room. Developers building post-war subdivisions by the hundreds of units at a time saw the numbers and made the obvious choice. The combined bathroom wasn't an architectural statement. It was a production decision. In practice, it meant combining 3 activities that have almost nothing in common. Bathing requires time, privacy, and heat. You need to undress, immerse yourself in water or stand under a shower, and then dry off and dress again. A process that typically takes anywhere from 10 minutes to half an hour depending on the person and the morning. Toilet use is brief, frequent, and entirely unrelated to cleansing. It happens multiple times a day, often at the worst possible moments, and it requires no preparation and no warm-up time. Sink use overlaps with both. You wash your hands after the toilet, you brush your teeth before the shower, you wash your face at the end of the day after the tub has already been used, and none of those moments align neatly with each other. These 3 functions don't just share a room, they compete for it. And in a house with more than one person, that competition becomes a daily friction point that never fully resolves. You know the version of this. Someone is in the shower. Now nobody can brush their teeth. Someone is getting ready for work. Now nobody can use the toilet. A child needs the bathroom before school, and the room is occupied for the next 20 minutes because someone decided this was the morning to wash their hair. One person in one room shuts down 3 separate functions for everyone else in the household. The Western answer to this has always been to add another bathroom, a powder room, a half bath, a second full bathroom, at a cost that runs from a few $1000s for the simplest half bath to $20,000 or more for a full addition. And every one of those added bathrooms exists not because the home needed more space, but because the original room was never designed to serve a household. It was designed to serve a plumbing budget. The smell problem alone should have been a signal. In a combined bathroom, the toilet sits 3 feet from the bathing space. In many layouts, it sits even closer, directly across from the tub, separated by a flooring that made sense to a builder and nobody else. Steam from a hot shower fills a room that also contains a toilet. The air that lingers after you flush is the same air you're breathing while you wash your face. The condensation that forms on the mirror also forms on the toilet lid, on the tank, on the cabinet doors above it. People adapted. They bought candles and spray and plug-in devices and learned a set of lid closing, window opening, fan running habits that got passed down through families like informal household law. But the room itself kept creating the problem every single day because the design was never fixed, only managed. It wasn't designed for a family. It was designed for a building budget. Japan took a different path. Not because Japanese homes are larger. Many are significantly smaller than Western equivalent, particularly in urban centers where residential space is measured in square meters with the same attention most people give to financial investments. The separation of bathroom functions in Japan was never a luxury feature added to larger homes. It was a baseline design principle applied even to the smallest apartments, because the separation was understood as a hygiene requirement, not a square footage reward. The result is 3 distinct rooms, each with a single purpose, that together occupy roughly the same total footprint as a standard Western combined bathroom. The walls simply fall in different places. The plumbing branches rather than converges. The doors open into smaller individual spaces rather than one larger shared one. The total area is comparable. The logic is entirely different. The Toyer is the toilet room. Small, self-contained, and efficient in the way that only a room with a single purpose can be. You walk in, you leave. Nothing else happens in that room. In modern Japanese homes, the Toyer is often the most technologically sophisticated space in the house. A heated seat that adjusts to user preference, an integrated bidet with adjustable water pressure and temperature, an automatic lid that opens at enter and closes after you leave, a built-in deodorizer that activates on use. The engineering investment in the toilet itself is significant, and it makes sense when the toilet has its own room, because the room was designed to make that single function as refined as possible. The Toyer is kept separate because what happens in that room should stay in that room. Waste, odor, and bacteria do not travel into the bathing space because there is no shared space for them to travel through. The door is closed. The contamination stays contained. The rest of the home remains unaffected. The Datsuziba is the washing and dressing room. It sits between the toilet room and the soaking room, and it functions as a transitional space, a buffer zone that keeps clean and dirty in distinct, physical locations. This is where you wash your hands. This is where you undress before bathing. This is where you dry off and dress again after soaking. The Datsuiba typically contains a sink, storage for towels and toiletries, and in many Japanese homes a washing machine, because laundry and bathing belong to the same zone of the home's hygiene logic. It is not a luxurious room, it is a functional one. It does one job clearly, and it does it without interference from the other jobs happening nearby. The Ofuro is the soaking room. And this is where Western visitors consistently misunderstand what the Japanese bathroom system is actually doing. The Ofuro is not where you wash your body. That happens in the Datsuiba at the shower area before you ever step near the tub. You wash completely, hair, face, body, while seated on a small stool using a handheld shower, rinsing until there is nothing left to rinse. Only after you are entirely clean do you lower yourself into the Ofuro tub. The water is hot. It is clean. It was clean before you entered it, and it remains clean because you entered it clean. The same water can be used by multiple family members in sequence across an evening, a practice. That would be unthinkable in a Western tub, where everyone understands that the water collects what the body releases, and that the person who goes last is soaking in what everyone else left behind. The Ofuro stays clean because the logic of the room enforces cleanliness before entry. The tub is not a place to get clean. It is a place to rest after you already are. That distinction sounds simple, and it is, which is exactly why it works so consistently, and why the Western shower tub combo, which asks the same fixture to serve both functions, ends up serving neither particularly well. If you've ever scrubbed a soap ring off a tub that reappeared 3 days later, you already understand the downstream consequence of asking one fixture to handle washing and soaking simultaneously. The ring comes from soap residue and body oils that enter the water during washing and then adhere to the tub wall at the water line as the water drains. It is not a cleaning failure, it is a design outcome. The fixture was used for what it was designed for, and the design produced the result. The only way to prevent it is to use the tub only for soaking in water your body didn't contaminate first, which is exactly what the Ofuro does, and exactly what your combined tub shower cannot. The Japanese didn't build 3 rooms because they had the space. They built 3 rooms because one room cannot do 3 jobs well, and they were never willing to pretend otherwise. If you've ever wondered why your own tub is the most exhausting surface in your bathroom to keep clean, this is the answer. You're using it for both washing and soaking. It was never designed to handle both gracefully. The Japanese didn't build 3 rooms because they had the space. They built 3 rooms because one room cannot do 3 jobs well. The hygiene case against the combined bathroom is harder to dismiss than most people expect. Every flush of a toilet creates aerosol, fine droplets of water that travel through the air and land on surrounding surfaces. Microbiological research has consistently documented this. In a combined bathroom, those surfaces include your toothbrush, your towels, your soap dish, and your washcloth. The distances involved are small enough that no amount of ventilation fully solves the problem. The room layout is the problem. If you subscribe now, you'll never look at an old house the same way again. In the Japanese Toyer, the toilet is in its own sealed room with its own ventilation path. The contamination doesn't travel because there's nowhere for it to go. In the Western bathroom, you've been man's problem with habits and products since you were old enough to use the room. You close the lid. You use a toothbrush cover. You store towels away from the toilet. All of that is you compensating for a design flaw built into the room before you ever moved in. You close the lid. The Japanese close the door. The traffic problem compounds everything. A combined bathroom is most disruptive not when it's failing structurally, but when it's functioning exactly as designed, because a room working at full capacity for one person means zero full capacity for everyone else. The toilet in a Japanese home is almost always separated even in the smallest apartments, not because space allows it, but because it's understood that the most frequently used function in any bathroom should never be blocked by the least urgent one. Western households solve this problem by adding bathrooms. A second full bathroom, a powder room, a half bath. Each of those additions costs money, often tens of thousands of dollars in renovation, and each one exists not because the home needed more space, but because the original room design couldn't serve a household. You paid to add a room because the first room was never designed to do its job, without backup. And this is before we get to what happens to the room itself over time, because the way the West built the combined bathroom created a structural maintenance problem that nobody put in the sales brochure. The Western tub has identity problem. It was sold as two things at once, a place to wash and a place to relax, and it does neither particularly well because the logic of those two activities directly contradicts each other. When you wash into tub, you're sitting in water that collects everything your body is releasing. Soap, dead skin, product residue, body oils. All of it accumulates in the water around you while you clean. You drain it, rinse the tub, and move on. When you want to soak, you fill the same tub and lower yourself into clean water that slowly becomes less clean the longer you stay in it. Neither experience is what the fixture was designed to optimize, because it was designed to serve both, which means it was designed to compromise on both. The Afuro doesn't have this problem because it was never asked to solve two contradictory problems simultaneously. You wash yourself completely at the shower area in the Datsuiba before you ever step into the soaking tub. You enter the Afuro clean. The water stays clean. The tub stays clean. A family of 4 can soak in sequence across an evening using the same water, and none of them are sitting in each other's residue because none of them entered the tub dirty. The fixture works because its purpose was kept singular and the room was designed around that purpose. Your tub, by contrast, accumulates soap scum at the waterline, mildew in the grout, and a ring of residue around the basin that reappears within days of cleaning because the surface is constantly being exposed to exactly the conditions that produce it. You scrub it, it comes back. You buy stronger products, it comes back faster. You consider a bath mat and a cleaning schedule and eventually just start using the shower exclusively while the tub becomes a storage shelf for shampoo bottles and a surface you clean out of obligation when guests are coming. The tub was supposed to be for relaxation. It became the room's most demanding cleaning job. The moisture problem goes deeper than the tub. Literally, a combined bathroom runs hot water, generates steam, accumulates humidity, and then tries to dry out, all while being used again within hours. The ventilation fan in a standard Western bathroom was added to address this, and it helps, but it was designed as a patch for a room that was never engineered to get wet in the way a bathing space does. Steam from a daily shower doesn't just hang in the air until the fan clears it. It moves into the porous surfaces around it. It gets into the drywall behind the tile. It soaks into the wood framing around the window. It finds the gap in the caulk at the base of the toilet and works its way into the subfloor over years, not decades. Years. That moisture accumulates in places you cannot see, and what grows in those places is mold. Not dramatic visible mold, hidden mold. The kind contractors find when they open a bathroom wall during renovation, and the drywall comes out in pieces. This is one of the most common surprises in bathroom renovation. You budget for new tile, you find rot behind the old tile. You budget for drywall replacement, you find it in the framing. A bathroom renovation that starts at $8,000 has a well-documented tendency to become a $15,000 renovation the moment the walls come open, and a significant portion of the time. The cause is moisture that was always there, accumulating quietly inside a room that was never quite able to dry out completely between uses. Don't miss a single video. Subscribe so you never fall behind. The Japanese Afuro room was designed as a wet room from the start. The floor is tiled and sloped toward a drain. The walls are tiled to the ceiling. There is no drywall behind the tile, no wood trim at the baseboard, no paperback backer that absorbs moisture over time. The room is designed to get completely wet and drain completely dry. The waterproofing is the room. You don't manage moisture in an Afuro room. You designed it out before construction began. In a Western combined bathroom, the waterproofing is a set of habits. You run the fan, you wipe down the walls. You recaulk the tub every couple of years. You replace the bath mat before it grows anything. You repaint the ceiling when the paint starts to bubble. All of it is maintenance that exists to compensate for a room that was designed to function in conditions it wasn't fully built to handle. The room looks dry. The wall behind it has been wet for 30 years. At this point in the conversation, most people raise the same objection. 3 rooms sounds fine for a large home, but Japanese apartments are small. Anyone who has spent time in Tokyo or Osaka knows that residential space is measured carefully and used deliberately. Urban Japanese apartments are not large by Western standards, and they still contain all 3 rooms. The toyer can be the size of a generous closet. The datsuiba can be a meter wide. The Ofuro room is compact enough to feel almost intimate. Together, the 3 rooms don't require significantly more floor space than a standard Western bathroom. They require different planning. The walls fall in different places. The plumbing branches instead of converging. The doors open into smaller individual spaces instead of one larger shared one. The total square footage is comparable. What changes is the intention behind every square foot of it. This is the part that tends to stop Western visitors cold when they first encounter a Japanese apartment that is, by any reasonable measure, smaller than what they grew up in, and still contains 3 distinct bathroom rooms. The assumption has always been that separation is a luxury, that 3 rooms means 3 times the space, that the Japanese system works because Japan has somehow solved the urban density problem in a way that permits this kind of spatial generosity. None of that is accurate. Toyer does not need to be large. It needs to be large enough for 1 person, 1 toilet, and 1 door that closes. That is not a space requirement. That is a planning requirement. And planning costs nothing compared to what it saves. The datsuiba in a small Japanese apartment might measure 1.5 meters by 2 meters. The Ofuro room beside it might be only slightly larger. The toyer down the short hallway might genuinely be the size of a well-organized coat closet. A visitor from a Western country, accustomed to bathrooms where you can stand at the sink, turn around, and touch the tub without taking a step, might look at these 3 small rooms and think the system requires more space than it has. What they are actually seeing is space that has been used with intention rather than compressed into a single room out of convenience. The floor plan of a Japanese home treats bathroom separation as a non-negotiable, the way a Western floor plan treats the kitchen sink as a non-negotiable. You design around it. You don't question it. It's just how the room works. The Western argument that combining the rooms saves space was always an economic argument dressed as a practical one. It saved money on construction. It simplified the plumbing layout. It reduced the number of doors, walls, framing runs, ventilation chases, and tile installations a builder had to coordinate and pay for. 1 room meant 1 set of permits, 1 inspection, 1 subcontractor schedule. Space efficiency was the justification offered to buyers. Construction cost was the actual reason the decision got made. And once that decision became the dominant standard in post-war residential construction, it stopped being questioned. Not because anyone evaluated it and confirmed it was correct, but because everyone was already living inside it, and the thing you live inside stops looking like a choice and starts looking like the way things are. You grew up in a combined bathroom. Your parents grew up in a combined bathroom. The houses you visited as a child, the apartments you rented in your 20s, the home you bought or are saving to buy, all of them contain a combined bathroom. Because all of the builders who constructed them were working from the same standard that every other builder was working from, which itself came from the standard established by the builders before them. At no point in that chain did anyone stop and ask whether the original decision was actually the best one. It was simply the one that had already been made. It was never about square footage. It was about who built the bathroom first and what they were trying to save. The renovation math tells the rest of the story, and it tells it in a language everyone understands. If you own a Western home and want to separate the toilet from the bathing space, even partially, even just pulling the toyer out into a small adjacent closet or an underused corner of a hallway, you are looking at a significant construction project. The existing plumbing stack was designed around a single room. To branch it, you need to open walls, reroute supply lines, extend drain runs to a new location, and ensure the new configuration meets current code, which, depending on your municipality, may have requirements about ventilation, clearances, and fixture placement that were written for combined bathrooms and don't translate cleanly to separated ones. A new ventilation run has to be added for the toyer. A wall has to be built or relocated. Structural elements may be in the way. Permits are required. Inspections are scheduled. The cost for even a modest toilet separation in an existing Western home typically starts in the range of $10,000 to $15,000 and escalates quickly from there, depending on what the contractor finds once the walls are open. If the plumbing is older, the stack may need updating before it can be branched. If the subfloor shows moisture damage, which it often does, because combined bathrooms generate moisture in ways their designers didn't fully account for, that gets added to the scope. If the wall you need to move turns out to be load-bearing, the project expands again. A bathroom renovation that begins as a simple reorganization of existing space has a consistent tendency to become something more expensive and more invasive the deeper it goes, because the room was built as a system, and changing part of the system reveals what the rest of it has been quietly doing for decades. That cost exists entirely because the original builder made a different choice. The design decision that seemed efficient in the 1940s or 1960s, the single plumbing stack, the combined room, the one-room solution to three separate problems, becomes a structural constraint that every subsequent owner has to work around. You can't change your mind about how the bathroom is organized the way you can repaint a wall or replace a floor. The plumbing is in the wall. The wall is part of the frame is part of the house. To undo the decision, you have to pay someone to physically reverse the choices that were made before you owned the property, possibly before your parents owned it, possibly before anyone alive today was involved in its construction. The builder completed the job, cashed the check, and moved on to the next house. The cost of that decision transferred entirely to the people who came after. The builder saved money once. Every owner after paid to deal with it. The combined bathroom spread the way most construction standards spread. Not through deliberate comparison and rational selection, but through the momentum of existing practice reinforced by economic incentive. It was the standard being used in the most influential housing markets at the exact moment when residential construction scaled up to a volume the world had never seen before. The post-war housing boom in the United States produced millions of new homes in a compressed window of time, and the combined bathroom was in all of them. Not because it had been evaluated against alternatives, but because it was what the builders knew, what the plumbers were trained to install, and what the inspectors were accustomed to approving. When you build at that scale, you don't experiment. You replicate. The export of American and British construction models through post-war international development carried that replication into markets that had their own deeply established bathing traditions. Countries where public bathhouses had been the dominant bathing culture for centuries. Countries where the separation of toilet and bathing functions was not a design preference but a social norm so deeply embedded it had never required articulation. Countries where the combined bathroom was not the default because the combined bathroom had never existed there before. New construction in those markets, particularly construction funded through international development programs or built to attract foreign investment, adopted the Western model because new construction meant modern construction, and modern construction meant Western construction, and Western construction meant the combined bathroom. The older tradition didn't disappear overnight. But the new buildings kept going up with combined rooms, and the new buildings were the ones associated with progress, with economic development, with the future. The combined bathroom became the global standard not because anyone evaluated it against the alternatives and found it superior. It became the standard because it was the cheapest model to build at the moment when the most homes were being built, and it arrived carrying the cultural weight of modernization alongside it. To reject it was to reject the model. To accept the model was to accept the bathroom. The logic was never about hygiene, it was about association. It wasn't chosen because it worked better. It was exported because it cost less. Your bathroom is not a neutral room. Is not a timeless solution arrived at through centuries of refinement and careful consideration of human needs. It is an economic decision made by someone who was trying to finish a building on budget, encoded into a standard that got replicated millions of times before anyone thought to question it, and inherited by you as though it were simply the way bathrooms work. It is not the way bathrooms work. It is the way one particular version of bathroom construction worked, at one particular moment in history, under one particular set of economic pressures that had nothing to do with how you actually live in the room. The three-room Japanese system is not exotic. It is not culturally specific in the way that makes it untranslatable. It is not dependent on large homes, high budgets, or architectural sophistication beyond what any competent builder already possesses. It is older than the Western combined bathroom, more logically consistent, and more honestly designed around what the human body actually needs from a hygiene space. The separation exists because bathing, washing, and toilet use are 3 different activities with 3 different contamination profiles and 3 different usage patterns. And the most straightforward way to handle 3 different things is to give each one a space that was designed for it. The Western bathroom looked at that logic and concluded it could be handled by 1 room, 1 plumbing stack, 1 exhaust fan, and a sufficient supply of air freshener. And technically it can. You have been proving that every morning for your entire life. The fan runs. The lid goes down. The tub gets scrubbed on a schedule you maintain out of necessity rather than preference. The morning routine gets negotiated around whoever happens to be in the room first. The caulk gets replaced every couple of years. The grout gets resealed. The cabinet under the sink gets checked periodically for the soft spot that indicates something is happening inside the wall that you cannot yet see, but that a contractor will eventually describe to you in terms of square footage and daily rates. The room works. It has always worked. It will continue to work for as long as you manage it, maintain it, work around its limitations, and absorb the costs of the decisions that were made inside it before you arrived. That is not a design standard. That is a compromise that got mistaken for one. Your bathroom has 3 jobs. The only question is whether it has 3 rooms, or whether you're the one making it work.